not all those who wander are lost. J.R. Tolkien. Welcome to Aegis Travel Adventures. We are Ken
and Gisele. We have been to over 100 countries and are still looking to see what is around the next corner. We love wine,
travel, and adventure. Listen to our podcast where we share the fun of the magical places, people, and cultures that have touched our lives.
Aegis.
Aegis.
Travel.
Travel.
Adventures.
Adventures.
Hello, this is Aegis Travel Adventures, and this is Ken.
And hi, this is Gisele, and welcome to our first ever video while we're recording our podcast. So glad you could join us.
So this would be podcast number 34, and we'd like to talk a little bit about cruising in some generalities and talk a little bit about our experiences. So before I met Gisele, I'd been on a few cruises, not too many, and did one with a toddler, did one with a family, and then when we started cruising, it was just the two of us, and we did my 70th birthday cruise with a family, about 15 of us. But in between, you start to look at cruises, and it's basically a clean slate. Where do you want to go? Well, I haven't been anywhere hardly, so it was really easy. And we have a cruise agent, which is actually my sister, but we pick the cruises, and we go online and we look at various places that we think we'd like to go. And how to explain it in the beginning, mostly it was we had a little bit of time off. We were still working, and so it was the Caribbean primarily.
Yeah, we live in Florida, in case you guys don't know that by now.
So there's like 5 cruise ports in Florida. If you live here, it's easy to get to, and so we had lots of choices, and so we started doing that. And I remember we came home on a Saturday from a cruise. I'm not sure which one it was, but on on Monday, I said to her, I happened to be looking in the cruises, and I said, there's one next Saturday that's unbelievably cheap, and it was on Royal Caribbean. It was 5 days, and I think we paid a total of like $400.
Yeah, it was, and because we can drive there, so we were like.
So we said sure. So we booked it, and we went right back and jumped on a ship and cruised some more in the Caribbean, and it was easy to do, and it was fun. And it was kind of before the beverage package thing exploded, and so you buy the drinks you want and et cetera. But since then, since I began cruising, in the early days, my first cruise was in the 80s, in the mid 80s, and it was expensive, but you had really good food. You had midnight seafood buffets. I
remember the chocolate fondues. When I graduated from college, that was my ex-husband gave me, that was what we did. And I went on a cruise, first cruise I'd ever been on. And I remember thinking, oh my God, the chocolate fondue alone was worth it.
So what they've done over time is they've broken it down into cheaper fares. But if you want the better food, then you go to the specialty restaurants. And if you want a beverage package, then you can order that and have unlimited drinks. In some cases, it's coffees, waters, and juices, for the non-alcoholic package, and in other ones it's the full boat. And there's other things you can get in packages. If you go up into certain levels, usually suites, then they throw in spa experiences, and there's just all kinds of things. So they've decoupled it. You put it back together to do what you want. And in the last few years, they've come up with a separate section of the cruise ship. In some cases, it's called like the Haven or the Retreat. Or the Retreat.
On the bigger cruise lines, not so much like on Viking, they don't do that.
On the bigger ships, and you have your own restaurants, but you can still go to specialty, in your own bars, in your own area where you don't have to fight for a chair around the pool. And it has
more elitist, for lack of better words.
You get more. You get turned down service at night, and you get more. You pay more. But it's more what cruising was done back in the early days.
And also, if you, like for us, we've been on lots of cruises, the crowds after a while get to be a little bit much. I don't want to have to fight somebody in the buffet line in the morning to get a bagel. That's just, we've been there, done that kind
Or
of
we
thing.
can't even find a seat.
Right, you can't even find a
You
seat.
can't even find a seat. You have to walk around until somebody leaves.
Yeah.
And,
You
and
keep
it's a little frustrating.
You're leering
honestly.
over people. Are you sure you're done with your food, lady? So we could have your seat. So for us, we've gone to smaller ships, etc. And so with Viking, Azamara, other smaller cruise lines that we've done on, you don't have any of that now. And then that's why when you go on the big ships, as Ken mentioned, the Haven Retreat, Blue, they eliminate some of that. So they're trying to bigger ships are trying to do that. But we're also going to talk a little bit about once you're on a ship, once you've decided where you want to go, what you want to do, being at sea for a lot of people, the concern of rough weather is definitely is part of their concerns. Everybody saw, they've all seen Titanic and things like that. So we've been on numerous cruises, I've said, and we've had some, I'd say, I don't know what percentage, but we've had quite a few that have been just normal, no problems whatsoever.
Could be in your bathtub.
Yeah,
it's
it could
as
be.
smooth
Yeah,
as can
and
be.
then we've had a few that have been extremely rocky and more so than we ever bargained for. And we just mentioned we were just on the Viking Vela in January, and we were in the North Sea. North Sea is traditionally can have rough weather.
Notorious for
in January especially. So we met it, and it was not fun, I will say, but I'll get back to that in a minute. So one of this discussion's about is when you go on a ship, what to expect or what to do it. So if you're seasick, we look into bringing the meds, find the things
bring
that
Dramamine, bring the ear patches. Not everybody can do ear patches.
I can't do ear patches, so I have to use the bracelet, or I have a lot of ginger tablets and all this kind of stuff. So you want to come on board presuming that you're going to have really rough weather, and you may not. The ship's
Usually you don't.
yeah, but in the ship's infirmary or medical thing, they're all set up for that. And so if you don't bring them, they're going to give it to you for free. But I think if you want the serious stuff, they may start to charge. And one thing about cruising, as we just mentioned, everything is cost. So they're not going to give you anything, serious drugs for free. So I suggest go to your doctor, say what your concerns are, and then they'll give you, things that make sense. So, and we also did a ferry ride. Where was this
We
from,
were in
Ken?
Iceland, and we went to the southernmost island, the Westman Islands. There's a couple of them, but only the ones inhabited. And it's volcanic, and they had a huge eruption, I think around the 70s, and they had to take everybody off the island, and one person died even. But it's rebuilt, and you can go visit a museum.
They've got the cutest place there where you can see baby puffins.
Yeah,
In fact, we have a video if you really want to go online. Gisele holding a baby puffin. One of the highlights of my traveling.
But the puffins they're really cute birds, and Westman Islands is one of the places you're most likely to see them. And the lights of the city attract them when they're young, and they fly in. They land in the city area, and they can't fly out. They're just not strong enough. So they have whole programs. They actually had a puffin rescue place there you can take them to. But a lot of the parents will collect the puffin, put it in a box, and then in the morning they go down to the cliffs and they bring the puffin out. And we have a video of Gisele doing this. And they hold it up and they give it a little bit and then they let it go.
It's so cool.
And,
it's really fun.
And they're called pufflings at that stage. They're not pretty like the parents.
Yeah, but they're so cute.
But they're cute. Yeah. And that way, if they lay around in the city, they're gonna die basically. They'll have no means of flying away.
And they don't know how to. I mean, they're babies. So So anyway, we're taking the ferry back to the mainland of Iceland.
We've been there 4 nights.
And usually it takes about 2 hours on the ferry. And we got a notice the day we were about to leave, or the day we were going to leave, that the weather was probably going to be rough, that they were going to halt ferry service. So they suggested, or they told you can't leave the island. So we stayed on the island an extra night. And so the next morning we got in, we already made re-reservations, and there was a very, very long queue to get on the ferry.
And we had a car.
Yeah, we had a car.
Rental
so you got on the ferry and you get there. And again, we're thinking it's going to be maybe 2 hours. We get there maybe 30 minutes into it, and the captain goes on, well, guess what? We can't go directly across because the weather is so bad. We're going to have to go the long way around, which is about
3.5 hours.
which turned out to be about 5 hours.
yeah.
And so that's probably one of the worst weather experiences we have ever had. And it was on a ferry, so you're not on a big cruise ship. And so you don't have the comfort of being in your room thinking, we're not going to go down with the ship. Ken and I, as usually, don't get seasick. So we're those. I might get a little queasier than he does, but those kinds of things, it just doesn't bother us as other stuff does. So we were like, I had my headphones in, listened to my music, trying to zone it out. But I've never seen more people sick on a vessel in my whole life. I mean, I felt so sorry for the attendants. Everybody was...
And parents with kids and the
and
kids.
yeah, a lot of people were standing outside as close to the wall as they could get because they couldn't stand to be inside because it was so bad. Yeah. So we survived, and we were really kind of worried about the cars. I'm like,
I went down at one point and checked on our rental car because they squeezed it into a little space, and I was afraid something would slide into it. The ship was rocking so badly, but nothing happened. And and this is the interesting part. The port that we left was not quite 2 hours, but it was kind of across from the islands, and it was close, and it was an easy sail, and it was calm. The one we went to was a long ways away, and it was a different port. So if we didn't have our car, they would have dropped us off in a place. And there's really no taxis there. I mean, maybe a couple that would come, but we weren't sure how we'd get back to where we started if we didn't have a rental car. And obviously there were some people that volunteered to take people back.
Yeah, there was really, and we would have if we
would have if somebody.
But nobody mentioned it. So
but it looked like it all worked out for everyone, but it was like 100 kilometers further away.
But I will say that was the smallest ship we were on and the worst weather. I mean, Ken is a scuba diver, so he's had some experiences when he was, coming back from Miami. I mean, back from the Keys, and back in the day, and he had some really rough weather. But for me, that was my first experience of really bad weather, and I'm like, okay, not what you get a little nervous. I won't.
Yeah.
Don't you agree?
Yeah. Well, it's not comfortable. Let's put it that way.
We did a cruise from from Bermuda.
We did one to Bermuda, and we stopped at Charleston. It was nice, and then we went to Bermuda, and we had, I think we were there 3 nights. It was at Royal Dockyards, and we wanted to go to Bermuda, and we went and we took the buses. You can't rent a car there. You can rent a scooter, but, that didn't seem like something we wanted to do. So we took buses, and they were clean, they were on time, they were comfortable. They went all the way to the end of the island. We did Crystal Caverns. We did a lot of fun things. And then we got on the ship, and we're heading to the Bahamas, and the captain says, well, there's a hurricane out there, and we're going to try to skirt around it. So we're going to go out and try to come back, and it's heading up kind of north.
Yeah.
So it looked like maybe it's going to hit Bermuda, but if we go out east far enough, we'll skirt it. Well, that wasn't good. And this particular ship, there was a lot of old people on it.
A lot of people with walkers.
Walkers and canes and
it wasn't good.
this went on for well over a day because we were skirting the hurricane, and people were hungry. It took 2 ship personnel for every old person to get them to the dining room. Escort them
because they couldn't use a walker, or they had to they couldn't use a wheelchair, etc. Because it was really
rough.
Now we discovered the good thing about that is if you on that kind of a ship and you don't have seasick like Ken and I, you don't get seasick. The bars are never crowded. So we had the bar was our oyster.
Maybe that's why we don't get
seasick.
Yeah,
maybe not. We couldn't decide. We thought we will sit at the bar, and if we get seasick, we'll let you know. Cheers. Anyway, so that was kind of our first. Those were our 3 worst experiences. Don't you think?
Until we got to the Vela in this last January.
The Viking Vela. That was the one to end all.
Now we did Antarctica, and we went to South Georgia Island from Ushuaia, and
one day we had rough seas, kind of.
No, not on the way to South Georgia.
No, yeah.
We went to the Falklands,
right.
And it was fine. Then it got rough in the Falklands, and we couldn't land. So our lander on the second day went to West Point Island, which was real nice. One of the out islands in the Falklands, but we tried to go into the main town and dock, and our ship just kept bouncing on the dock. It looked like it was in one bounce it was going to go over the top.
We were in dinghies or
the the rescue ships,
Right,
safety
yes,
ships,
yeah.
lifeboats.
Yeah, so we weren't on the ship
Landing.
itself wasn't out.
Yeah.
The ship had docked out
Yeah.
in the bay.
Yeah, and we just couldn't get it up to the dock safely, so we went back and we skipped a day. But then we went to South Georgia, it was fine, and then we went to Antarctica, and that was fine. But we talk about the Titanic and icebergs. I mean, I have never seen so many icebergs in my life, and it was cool. And we saw one that was the size of a city, and I mean,
We saw the really big one that people talk about.
the one that
Yeah.
broke off the ice shelf.
Yeah.
It's just huge. But at night, they had 2 spotlights in the front of the ship, and this was a expedition ship with Viking, and they had them in front of us, and they have radar, but the smaller icebergs or small ones, they were looking for. The big ones they could see on the radar, but they still didn't want to hit them if they could avoid them.
That's true.
And so we got to Antarctica, we did all our stuff, we had some rough weather down there, and we had some good weather. And then the most notorious place for bad weather is the Drake Passage, which is Antarctica back to Ushuaia.
What do they call it? The Drake Shakes or something like that?
Yeah, well,
something like
they
that.
have various names for them, but it's...
We didn't experience it.
And the first day it was rough, but it wasn't horrible. I put on my ear patch. She did whatever she had, or Dramamine or whatever.
Yeah.
And there was a lot of people that weren't doing well and so on, and it wasn't bad. So I took my ear patch off. We were done.